Smoke still lingered as the Oaks family pulled away from the scorched trail. The wind carried the sharp sting of burned wood. The sky to the west glowed faintly orange, not a sunset, but the embers of a fire still smoldering somewhere after last night's fast-moving wildfire. "Just a few days of evacuation," Dad said, eyes locked on the GPS map. "Once the firefighters finish up in the southern zone, we'll head back." Harper, Benny's older sister, sat in the back, arms wrapped around her backpack, earbuds in, but no music playing. Benny, 11 years old, sat by the window, eyes fixed on the flakes of ash drifting past the wheels. The SUV came to a stop at a temporary campsite on the edge of the forest, set up for evacuees. Pop-up tents, makeshift kitchens, rationed drinking water. Everything was temporary. "Benny, go help your dad with the tent," Mom called. But he didn't answer. His eyes were still locked on a patch of charred forest behind them. "Can I just go for a quick walk? Just around here." Mom looked at Dad, then gave a small nod. 15 minutes. Don't go far." Benny stepped toward the edge of the forest, where a sea of green had turned to dry soil, blackened stumps, and ash drifting like black snow. He picked his way carefully through broken branches, his shoes coated in soot. Then he heard something. Very faint, fragile, almost impossible to notice unless everything else was completely still. A whimper? Benny stopped, held his breath. There it was again, a high-pitched sound, like a small animal crying out for help. He stepped around a scorched tree stump and crouched down. In the middle of the ashes was a tiny creature, shivering, curled up tight. Wrinkled pink skin, long ears sticking up, big round eyes filled with tears. It looked at Benny, not scared, but like it was begging. Benny froze. A puppy? The thought jumped into his head. Maybe a hairless breed, like the ones he'd seen in rescue videos. Left behind when the owners fled the fire? No time to save it? Forgotten? He wasn't sure. But he knew one thing. It couldn't stay here. "Hey there, little guy," Benny whispered, kneeling down. The creature let out a soft sound, thin as thread. Without hesitation, Benny took off his hoodie, gently wrapping the creature and pulling it close to his chest. It didn't resist. It just burrowed deeper into the fabric, like it had finally found the only safe place left in this burned-out world. He stood up, glanced around. No one had seen, no voices calling from the camp. Benny turned and hurried back down the dirt path, heart pounding, unsure if what he was doing was right or wrong. But deep down, he knew one thing. Leaving it behind wasn't an option. Back at the tent, Harper was sitting there, checking her phone. No signal. "Where'd you go?" she asked, eyes still on the screen. "Just walked around," Benny muttered, heading straight to the corner of the tent. He sat down, turned his back to his sister, and carefully opened the hoodie. The tiny creature was still curled up, eyes half closed. Benny reached out and gently stroked its head. Its skin was warm, strangely warm, like there was a glow beneath the thin surface. "You're okay now," Benny whispered. "I'm not leaving you." He pulled the hoodie tight, covering it completely. In his mind, the image was clear. A tiny puppy, miraculously surviving the fire, found by him. And now, his secret. That night, Benny couldn't sleep. The Oaks family's tent barely fit 4 people lying side by side. Harper had her back to the wall, earbuds in, pretending to sleep. Dad was breathing steadily. Mom wasn't moving anymore either. Only Benny lay wide awake in the dark, clutching the fabric at his chest. Beneath it, the small creature stayed curled up in a dry hand towel, shifting slightly with each quiet breath. He unzipped the hoodie just a little, just enough to peek inside. The puppy was still awake. Its eyes were wide, glowing softly in the dark, not like a cat's reflective glare, but more like a nightlight. Gentle, warm, strange. "Maybe it was left alone for too long," Benny whispered, trying to reason with himself. "Maybe it's a sick dog or something, some rare breed with no fur." It stared up at him, unblinking. Then suddenly, as Benny tilted his head, the creature tilted its head too. He tried again, leaned left. It leaned left just the same. He blinked twice. It blinked twice. Benny froze. "A puppy that copies you?" He gave a quick nod. The creature nodded back. Slow, a little wobbly, but definitely a mirrored movement. Benny's heart beat faster. But he wasn't scared, just surprised and drawn in. "You're really smart," he whispered, smiling, "like one of those service dogs." It tilted its head again, then let out a small sound, not a bark, not a squeak, just a short, breathy chirp, almost like a soft whistle. Benny stroked its head. Its skin was still warm, soft like a newborn's. He let out a slow breath and said, almost just to himself, "You need a name." He looked at it for a moment, then turned to his backpack and pulled out an old towel, still faintly smelling of smoke. "You're what's left from the fire, but you made it. You didn't disappear with the ash." He looked back at the little creature and whispered, "Ember." Its eyes blinked slowly, and somehow, Benny knew it understood. The next morning, when everyone stepped out of the tent, Benny told his mom he had a bit of a headache so he could stay behind. She placed a hand on his forehead, then gave a small nod. "Stay in the tent, no running around, okay?" Once no one was around, Benny shot up. He gently took Ember out and placed it on the emergency blanket. "Let's see what you can do," he whispered. Ember stood up, a little wobbly, but then it walked. Small steps, steady, like it had been doing it forever. It tilted its head when Benny did. Benny sat down cross-legged. Ember mirrored him perfectly. He propped his cheek up with one hand. Ember lifted a foot to its face, awkward, unsure, but trying. "Dogs don't do that," Benny whispered. He grabbed a pencil and scribbled some lines into his notebook. Ember crawled closer, gently bumping its head against the drawing, like it was studying it. Benny fake coughed. Ember backed up, then let out a small cough of its own, or at least tried to mimic the sound. Then came the moment that made Benny freeze. Just as he was about to close his eyes, Ember blinked first. Like it already knew what he was going to do. "How did you know I was gonna do that?" Benny whispered, lightly touching his own forehead. Ember responded by pressing its head gently against his. Benny's heart raced. He wasn't scared, but that familiar feeling, the idea that this was just a puppy, was starting to slip. Maybe it was a dog, some kind of breed no one's ever seen. Maybe it was a dog, but exposed to something in the fire. Or maybe not a dog at all. Benny didn't know. But he knew one thing. Whatever Ember was, something real had formed between them. A connection. Not like having a dog, not like having a pet. It felt more like they understood each other. No words needed. And that's why, even as he started to notice things that didn't quite add up, Benny held on to the hope that had been in his mind from the start. Just a puppy. Just a really smart puppy. But every day, Ember surprised him a little more. At first, Benny thought taking care of it would be like raising any puppy. Feed it, keep it warm, play with it, wait for it to grow. But Ember didn't just grow fast. It changed fast, in ways Benny couldn't explain. By day 2, Ember had figured out how to unzip the hoodie from the inside. By day 3, it started doing something strange. Standing still, watching Benny for a long time before, mimicking things he hadn't even done yet. Benny would think about scratching his head. Ember lifted a paw first. He'd glance at the water bottle. Ember turned its head toward it before he even moved. Once Benny thought to himself, "I want to draw you." Within 2 seconds, Ember had crawled over to the notebook and sat perfectly still, like it knew it was supposed to pose. It felt like someone was listening to his thoughts. Harper was the first to notice Benny was hiding something. "You've been holding on to that hoodie since day 1, she said, arms crossed, staring at him in the tent. "Aren't you hot?" Benny froze. "No, I'm used to it." Harper narrowed her eyes. "Show me what's inside the hoodie." "There's nothing." "Open it." He hesitated, but knew he couldn't hide it much longer. With a sigh, Benny slowly unzipped the hoodie, revealing Ember, lying still, long ears drooped, pretending to sleep. Harper didn't scream, didn't react the way Benny had expected. She just stared for a long moment. "What is that?" "Puppy," Benny said quickly, though even he wasn't so sure anymore. Harper sat down, gently pulling the hoodie down a bit more. Ember opened its eyes, locking onto hers. No fear, no flinch. "A hairless puppy?" Harper asked. "Rare breed," Benny mumbled. "Could be a Mexican hairless, or maybe it lost its fur in the fire." Harper didn't respond. She studied the tiny creature like she was reading something in its skin, in every tiny movement. "And it glows," she said quietly. Benny stayed silent. Finally, Harper exhaled. "All right, I won't tell Mom and Dad, but there's one condition." She pulled a notebook from her backpack. "From now on, we observe. Take notes. No jumping to conclusions. If you're going to raise it, you have to understand it." Benny nodded. He knew he didn't have a choice. From that day on, the two of them became a secret research team. Harper documented. Benny tried behaviors. Ember kept pushing the limits of what they thought possible. Like when Harper drew a circle and a triangle on a piece of paper. Ember looked at the two shapes, then gently scratched the paper with a claw, forming a star. It didn't look random. It looked like it knew exactly what it was doing. Like it understood it needed to respond with something new. Another time, Harper pretended to reach for a piece of candy in her pocket. Before her hand even moved, Ember stretched out a paw, pointing directly at the pocket, then looked up at her and squinted. "I think it can read minds," Harper whispered. "No, no way." "Then how do you explain it reacting before we even do anything?" Benny couldn't. That night, he lay awake, staring at the roof of the tent. Ember was curled up beside him, its head resting on his wrist, breathing slow, steady, but it didn't look like a puppy anymore. Its eyes seemed bigger. Its skin had shifted from pale pink to a warm gray, and the long ears were starting to curve at the tips, almost like tiny wings. Benny whispered, "What are you?" Ember didn't answer, of course, but suddenly it stirred and nestled deeper into his palm, pressing its face against him. Maybe still a puppy, just a weird one, a mutation. Or maybe it was part of some experiment, still a dog. Benny repeated it like a mantra, but each time his voice got a little softer. The next morning, Harper handed him the notebook. There were 3 new pages. Inside, Observation 1, Ember reacts before behavior is initiated. Observation 2, can locate sound sources without turning its head. Observation 3, understands human facial expressions and body language. Observation 4, eyes emit light in low light conditions. Observation 5, can mimic complex movements after a single viewing. Harper looked up at Benny. "It's not a dog. Maybe it's a dog that hasn't been classified yet." Benny, silence. Long. Finally, Benny spoke, barely above a whisper. "I don't know anymore." Harper placed a hand on his shoulder. "Neither do I. But one thing's clear. This isn't something people are supposed to find out about." At that moment, Ember was crawling toward the corner of the tent, staring out through the thin fabric toward the woods. Its ears stood straight up, no trace of sleepiness, just alertness. As if it knew too. It was different. And maybe someone else out there knew it too. That afternoon, Benny was sitting with Harper on a rock ledge behind the camp. Ember lay curled in his lap, sunlight filtering through the leaves, casting a soft glow on its pink-gray skin. Harper was jotting down a few more reactions when a man's voice called out from the camp entrance. "Hello, excuse me, who's in charge of this area?" Benny looked up. A tall man in a forest green ranger uniform was speaking with a volunteer near the kitchen area. His wide-brimmed hat shaded most of his face, but his voice was clear, calm, yet with a subtle strain, like he was forcing the tone to stay even. Harper tugged Benny's sleeve. "Hide Ember. Now." Benny quickly wrapped Ember in the towel, slipped it inside his hoodie, and zipped it all the way up to his neck. Ember nestled into his chest like it had done this 100 times before. The man started walking through the camp, scanning each family as he passed. In one hand, he held a small notebook, flipping through a few pages before stopping in front of an elderly woman sitting and rubbing her feet. "Excuse me, ma'am, have you seen anything unusual in the woods these past few days? A small creature, not typical wildlife?" The elderly woman frowned. "Unusual how?" "Could be a wild animal or an unidentified pet. Small, possibly hairless. If anyone's seen anything strange, please report it immediately. It's part of a post-fire ecological inspection." Her response didn't matter anymore. Harper and Benny were already on their feet, walking quickly back toward their family's tent. "We're screwed," Harper whispered. "Did you see the name tag on his uniform?" "What?" "Calder." Benny stopped cold. "The one from the old observation station logbook, the guy who reported that crash like 15 years ago?" Harper nodded, eyes still locked on the man. "He's not a regular ranger. Might not even be a ranger at all." They ducked behind a makeshift tarp wall, watching as Calder moved from tent to tent, asking the same thing every time. Had anyone seen anything strange? Any unusual animals? Benny felt his whole body flush with heat. Ember stirred inside his hoodie, like it could sense something too. Then Calder turned, directly facing their hiding spot. "We have to leave," Harper said quickly. "Tonight?" "Go where?" "Anywhere he's not." Dinner that night was heavy with tension. Calder sat not far from their family, holding a tray of food like everyone else, but his eyes never stopped scanning the kids around the camp. Harper picked up a piece of potato, murmuring, "I'm betting he's going to search the camp tonight, or worse." "He's here for Ember?" Benny asked, one hand deep in his hoodie pocket, shielding the creature pressed silently against his chest. No doubt, he's looking for something. Something that's not supposed to be out here. Benny looked around. People were still eating, laughing, swapping stories about surviving the fire. No one realized a stranger in a fake uniform was here, hunting for something that might not even belong to this world. He lowered his head, resting his cheek against the slight bulge under his hoodie. Ember was still warm, still quiet. But in his chest, a sense of dread began to rise, like something much bigger, much more serious, was coming. As soon as night fell, Harper quietly pulled Benny behind the tent, away from the lantern light strung through the camp. "I checked," she whispered. "The badge on his uniform, it's fake. The logo's wrong. The fabric's different from the state ranger gear." Benny stared at her. "Then, who is he?" "I don't know, but he's definitely not a real ranger, and he's coming back tonight." Harper pulled a worn map from her backpack, one she'd taken from the abandoned observation station. "I marked a few old trails. If we leave now, we can slip into the woods before he notices." Benny gripped his sleeve tighter. Ember was still inside, motionless, but its ears twitched at Harper's voice, listening. "What about Mom and Dad?" Benny asked. "I left a note, said we were out collecting plant samples for a school project, back by morning. If we told them the truth, they'd never let us go." Harper's eyes turned serious. "If he finds Ember, they'll take it. Lock it up, or worse, put it down. Benny, we have to move before it's too late." Benny gave a small nod. 5 minutes later, the two of them slipped out of camp through the back, ducking under a tarp barrier and sliding down a damp dirt slope. No one saw them. No one called after them. Just the dark, the smell of wet grass, and the sound of the forest beginning to wake. They moved by red flashlight, the kind that's harder to spot from a distance. Ember was now out of Benny's hoodie, clinging to his wrist like a cross between a mouse and something stranger, its eyes giving off a soft glow. Every time Benny paused to catch his breath, Ember turned to scan behind them, as if it could feel exactly where the danger was coming from. "Where are we even going?" Benny asked. "There's a rock ridge, the highest point around here. No one goes up there because it's too steep. But I read in an old field log that a biology survey team once set up a temporary shelter up there. If anything's still there, we might be able to use it." The forest at night didn't feel like the same place as during the day. Branches seemed to stretch longer, the darkness thick like fog. Harper and Benny had to hold tightly to each other's arms just to stay together. A dry branch cracked somewhere behind them. They froze. "Probably a deer," Benny whispered. Harper shook her head. "No, deer don't move alone through burn zones." She yanked him down a narrow side path to the left, almost completely swallowed by underbrush. Ember gripped tighter to Benny's shoulder, its ears perked, alert. They ran non-stop for nearly 20 minutes, until Benny started to gasp for air. "Wait, hold on," he panted, clutching Ember closer. Harper glanced around, then pulled him behind a large moss-covered boulder. "Quiet," she said. In the distance, heavy footsteps. Not rushed, not panicked, steady and firm. Like someone who knew they didn't need to hurry. A deep male voice echoed through the trees. "I'm not here to hurt anyone. I just need the creature. The kids took it with them. They don't understand how dangerous it really is." Harper tightened her grip on Benny's hand. That voice, it was Calder. "Listen to me," Harper whispered. "If something happens, you take Ember and run north. There's a narrow ravine that leads to a stream. From there, you can get to the highway. What about you?" "I'll buy time." "No." But Harper was already up, striding in the opposite direction. From the distance, Calder caught sight of movement and shined his flashlight. "Stop! Who's there?" Harper ran. Benny couldn't shout. He clutched Ember tighter, backing deeper into the brush, shaking, unsure what to do. Inside his chest, everything felt like it was splitting open. Fear, anger, helplessness. Then Ember made a strange sound, not a cry, but like a signal echoing back from somewhere far away. And suddenly, the ground beneath Benny trembled. Behind him, in the rock wall, a narrow seam cracked open, like a hidden door built into the forest. Ember leapt from his arms and darted inside. Ember! With no other choice, Benny ducked his head and crawled in after Ember, into what turned out to be the mouth of a natural tunnel. The air inside was cool, damp, tinged with the scent of ancient stone. Outside, the footsteps faded, Harper's voice pulling Calder farther away. Benny crawled deeper, clutching Ember tight. He didn't know where he was going, didn't know who was chasing them, didn't know if they'd ever make it back to camp. He only knew one thing: he had to get Ember as far away as possible before it was too late. The tunnel eventually opened onto a mossy slope, where weak light filtered down through the dense canopy above. Benny tumbled partway down, dirt and rocks clinging to him, finally landing near a vine-covered boulder. Behind him, hurried footsteps. But familiar. Benny, Harper, scraped up, hair wild, squeezing through the narrow opening, gasping for air. I pulled him far enough away. Thank God you weren't there. Benny didn't respond. He just lifted his head and nodded toward what Ember was staring at. Right at the edge of the moss, half buried under leaves and thyme, was a metal door, rusted, faded. Ember stood still, eyes locked on it. They stepped closer. Stamped across the corroded surface was a barely readable label. Station 9, Observation Entry. Harper yanked on it with her gloved hand. After a few rusty groans, the door creaked open, revealing a dark passage and the thick, moldy air of something long forgotten. I've got a flashlight, Harper said, her voice raw. They followed a narrow metal staircase down into a tight corridor, the walls lined with old yellowed notes still clinging to pinboards. The beam of the flashlight cut through a blanket of dust thick as ash, but at the end of the hall a heavy door hung slightly open. Inside, a room, some equipment still intact. Waiting. A research station, Harper whispered. Abandoned, but still intact. Ember walked in first, without hesitation. Step by step, slowly, like it already knew what this place was. Ember, has it been here before? Benny asked. The question echoed through the cold, damp air. In the corner, Harper found a metal cabinet. She pried it open with her pocket knife. Inside, a stack of documents, most water-damaged or covered in mold. But one leather-bound notebook had been sealed and preserved. The label read, Sample Log, 7KNR, November, 14 years ago. Harper opened it. The handwriting was sharp and clear, with diagrams, data tables, and biological notes. The first page, Unidentified object crash-landed in Zone 5, coordinates 34.7 N to 1 and 17.2 W. No technological debris, only a living pod, opened after 72 hours. Inside was an unidentified organism. They both froze. Harper flipped to the next page. We named it KN7. Extremely high learning capacity, mimics human behavior after minimal observation, emotionally responsive, shows strong tendency to bond with first human it encounters. Benny clenched his fists. After 2 months, the subject escaped containment. Unknown how. Security systems failed simultaneously. Station ordered to cease operations. Project suspended. Final report sent to higher authority. No response received. Harper closed the notebook. Her eyes locked onto Ember, now standing beside an old wooden desk, ears upright, eyes blinking, as if trying to remember something. Harper? Benny swallowed hard. Is Ember KN7? Harper didn't answer right away. She stepped closer to Ember and crouched down. You were here 14 years ago? Ember didn't move, but in its eyes there was something more than instinct, a depth, like memory, awareness, something no ordinary creature could have. Then why is it still so small? Benny whispered. Maybe its biological aging isn't like ours, or maybe it was, in stasis, or hurt. Or, Harper looked up, her expression shifting. Maybe it didn't want to grow, didn't want to be found. They both sat down on the cold floor of the station, quiet for a long time. The notebook lay open in front of them. Ember rested between them, still watching the old control panel like it remembered what it once did. The crash, it wasn't random, Harper said. Whatever this thing is, someone was raising it, studying it, and no one reported it because they were scared it would get out. And Calder? Maybe he worked here. Or he's with whatever group used to monitor KN7. And now they picked up Ember's signal again. Benny sat frozen. Ember was a survivor of a crash, a being that didn't come from this planet. And he, just a kid who happened to scoop it out of the ashes. You still want to believe it's just a puppy? Harper asked, not mocking, just quietly sad. Benny didn't speak. He reached down and gently stroked Ember's head. Puppy or not, he whispered, it's still Ember. He'd named it with a feeling, not science, not logic, just instinct. A spark left behind in the ashes. Harper picked up the notebook. I'll hang on to this. If we get caught, it's better they find it on me than on you. Benny nodded. Before leaving the station, Benny turned for one last look. Ember was still facing the room, like it was saying goodbye. No fear, no sadness, just a quiet knowing that this place had once been its origin, but it was no longer home. And in that brief moment, Benny understood. What was coming next wouldn't be easy. Ember was no longer just his secret. Night fell fast, like someone had pulled a black curtain over the forest. They'd been gone from the observation station for nearly an hour, but the knot in Benny's stomach hadn't loosened. Ember walked close beside him, ears up, silent. It tilted its head toward the wind, eyes glowing in the dark like two still fireflies. "I feel like we're being watched," Harper whispered, eyes locked on a crumpled map. "There are no footprints here, but that feeling doesn't lie." Benny nodded, saying nothing. He felt it too. Then, a click behind them. Small, but loud as thunder in the quiet. Harper yanked Benny down flat. Ember ducked between them, ears pinned low. Then came the flashlight. A sharp beam swept across the bushes 30 meters away. Footsteps on dry branches. First one set, then two, then three. "They brought backup," Harper murmured. "It's not just Calder anymore." A voice rang out, low, cold. "Move east. Signal trace shows the subject is close." Benny felt his chest tighten. They picked up Ember's signal? Harper bit her lip. Could be biological, heat signature. Or maybe it's eyes. Suddenly, Ember looked up, eyes wide. But instead of panicking, it turned and backed toward a cluster of moss-covered rocks. It tapped the stone wall with its paw. "What's it doing?" Benny asked. No one answered. Ember tapped again, and the rock shifted slightly, sliding aside to reveal a narrow, pitch-black opening. Harper's eyes widened. "Underground tunnel system. How does it know?" "Not knowing," she said softly, remembering. Without hesitation, Harper pushed Benny through first. Ember slipped in after him, and Harper followed last. The rock door slid silently shut behind them. Inside, it was total darkness, until Ember's body gave off that soft glow, just enough to light the jagged walls. The tunnel was damp, thick with the smell of wet earth. Every sound echoed, like whispers from somewhere deep and strange. "Watch the step," Harper warned as Benny nearly slipped on a slick stone. "Do you think they'll find the entrance?" If Calder worked at the station, there's a good chance he knows these tunnels too. Behind them, flashlights appeared again. Farther now, but aimed straight toward the rock cluster they'd just entered. "Move," Harper urged, grabbing Benny's arm. Ember took the lead. It never hesitated, as if a map was already etched in its mind. Whenever the tunnel narrowed, it turned back, gently tapping Benny's leg like a signal to crouch. At every fork, it went left, always left. Footsteps echoed behind them, sometimes clear, sometimes faint. Benny kept glancing over his shoulder, heart pounding louder with every step. A little farther in, Harper suddenly stopped. "Do you hear that?" All three of them froze. A soft sound, flowing water, gentle, steady. Ember perked up, then leapt onto a rocky ledge and disappeared from view. "Ember!" Benny called out in a whisper, chasing after it. Beyond the rock was a wide chamber, the ceiling arched high with jagged stalactites hanging like beasts' teeth. In the center was a pool of underground water, crystal clear and faintly glowing. Ember stood at the edge, staring into the water, and reflected on the surface wasn't just its image. It was a network, not a map, not a scene, but a memory. Benny stepped closer and saw it too. An active observation station, researchers in white coats, and Ember, larger, stronger, but alone in a cold glass enclosure. "Do you see this?" Benny asked. Harper nodded. "It's not a hallucination. It's something it's showing us." Ember touched the surface of the water. The image rippled, then disappeared. "Ember remembers," Harper whispered. "It's not running because it's scared. It's running because it remembers what happened before." Footsteps echoed behind them, closer now. No mistaking it. Harper grabbed Benny's hand. "We have to move. This cave might connect to the western ravine. I saw it once on an old map." "Then where?" Harper looked at Ember. "That's up to it. It's leading us now." Their journey through the cave continued, long, winding like a maze. In some stretches, they had to crawl flat against the ground, shoulders scraping the rough rock walls. Ember never stopped, never hesitated. The glow from its body dimmed and brightened, almost like it was adjusting to the oxygen levels. Behind them, the sound of pursuit had faded, but none of them dared to slow down. Just when Benny thought he couldn't take another step, a faint light appeared at the end of the tunnel. Not natural light, but a weathered wooden door, leading out to a rocky ledge on the mountainside. Harper pushed it open. Cold air rushed in. Outside was a narrow valley, blanketed in scorched grass and scattered stone. No flashlights, no voices, no signs of anyone chasing them. "We made it out?" Benny asked, not fully believing it. "For now," Harper replied. Ember stood at the center of the valley, face turned skyward. Its ears were perked, body glowing brighter than usual, as if it knew the chase was over. But what was coming next would be more than that. Dawn cast a pale light across the rocky valley where the three had taken shelter through the night. No more boots crashing behind them, no more beams slicing through the trees, just wind moving through scorched trunks and the steady, silent breath of a world returning to calm. Benny sat against the base of a fallen tree, hoodie wrinkled, eyes dark from no sleep. Ember curled in his lap like a small ember leaf, eyes half open, more awake than asleep. Harper came back with some water from the stream, setting it in front of them. "Drink. You need to stay sharp." Benny didn't move. "I couldn't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see Calder's flashlight coming for us." Harper sat down next to him, pulling the notebook from her jacket pocket. She opened to a blank page, pen in hand, but didn't write right away. "We can't keep running forever," she said. "No one's chasing us now," Benny rasped. "They didn't find the exit." "It's not that they didn't find it," Harper looked at him. "It's that they're planning their next move." They both fell silent. Ember lifted its head, looking toward Harper like it understood exactly what they were talking about. "Benny," Harper said gently but firmly, "you know we can't keep Ember with us forever, right?" Benny looked down at the small creature in his arms. From the day he thought it was just a puppy, to the moment he learned it came from somewhere far beyond this world, the connection hadn't faded. If anything, it had only grown deeper. Deeper than anything he'd ever felt before. "I know," he whispered, "but I don't want to let it go." "I don't either," Harper said, "but if we really care about Ember, we have to give it freedom. Not a life of hiding. It deserves to live by its own instincts, its own intelligence, its own origin." Benny lowered his head. "And," Harper continued, "if we do this right, it might still find its way back." That afternoon, the two of them began building a hidden spot in the forest, a place where sunlight barely slipped through the canopy, where the ground was flat and untouched by larger animals. Harper called it the refuge. They gathered thin branches and arranged a simple frame, covered it with dry leaves and moss for warmth. Benny laid his old hoodie down as a soft bed. Ember wandered in, sniffing every corner, pawing at patches of soil. It stopped near the log Harper had placed as a small perch, looked up at both of them, and then quietly curled up inside. This time, Ember didn't burrow into a sleeve or curl up in Benny's lap. It lay by itself, quiet, still, as if it understood this place was home. "We'll come back every day," Benny said, voice thick with emotion. "And if anything happens," Harper added, holding up a small device, "I've set up a thermal sensor nearby. Any unusual movement, we'll know." From inside the shelter, Ember peeked out. It didn't move, just sat, watching them, like it was memorizing every detail of their faces, every small motion. "Still remembers us," Harper said, "but doesn't need us anymore." Before leaving, Benny unzipped his backpack and pulled out an apple and a few broken pieces of cracker, Ember's favorites. He placed them gently on the flat stone beside the shelter. Ember didn't rush over, just tilted its head. And then, one small movement that stopped Benny cold, it leaned forward, nudged its forehead against the back of his hand once, and stepped back. No sound, no clinging, just a goodbye. Benny turned away, not wanting Harper to see the redness in his eyes. But Harper didn't say a word. She knew, sometimes, real love means letting go. The sky was stained deep purple by the time Benny and Harper made it back to the temporary camp. The place was still a mess, scattered with signs of the chase, bags left behind, a shredded backpack, a collapsed tent pole. But no people, no strange voices, no sign that Calder or anyone else had come back. Safe for now. Harper switched off the sensor after confirming the signal was stable. "No one's touched the refuge," Benny nodded. He hadn't said a word the entire way back. Ember was no longer in his hoodie, not perched on his shoulder, not wrapped around his wrist. That strange emptiness made Benny feel weightless and crushed at the same time. Night had fully fallen. A crescent moon hung above like a thin silver blade, its glow glinting faintly on the torn tent roof. Harper was already asleep. Benny lay still, eyes wide open, staring at the fabric ceiling. He could hear every sound outside, the hum of insects, the soft wind slipping through broken branches, and the quiet, steady beat inside his own chest. He thought he'd feel relieved, knowing Ember had a safe place now. But why did it ache so much? Near midnight, when the forest sounds had faded and the moon drifted near its peak, Benny suddenly felt something warm brush the back of his hand. He turned his head. Ember. It stood just outside the tent, a small creature glowing gently, its eyes shining like 2 drops of glass. It didn't crawl in like before, didn't ask to be held, didn't make a sound. It simply lifted one paw and placed it on his hand. Cool, but soft, like a breeze that knew how to care. Benny said nothing. He didn't want to break the moment with words. He just brought his other hand up and placed it lightly over Ember's. One beat, then another. Ember tilted its head, gazing at him, that same old soul look, deep and knowing. "I know," Benny whispered, voice nearly carried away by the wind. "It's not forever." Tears slipped down his cheek, warm as morning sunlight. He didn't cry out, he didn't run after it. He just smiled, a trembling, honest smile. Because he understood, some meetings are miracles, and some goodbyes aren't about losing, but about never forgetting. Ember turned, pulled its paw away. Then, like a faint ribbon of light, it slipped silently into the forest's shadow. No sound, no glance back. But Benny knew it would always remember the way home. 1 year later, the forest where everything unthinkable had happened was green again. Fresh shoots pushed through old ash. The ground once torn by fire was now soft with grass and wildflowers, as if nature too had chosen to forgive. The Oaks family returned for a short weekend trip. No one said exactly why, but they all knew. There was no tension, no chase, no one watching. Just memories and truths that had never been given names. Benny was a little taller now, his hair longer. But still the same boy, the one who once hid a creature not of this world inside an old hoodie. "I want to walk alone for a bit," he said as the family paused near the edge of the woods. Harper nodded. She handed him an apple, her voice quiet. "Just like last year, okay?" Benny slid his hands into his pockets and walked slowly toward the old refuge. Weeds reached his knees. A few charred trees still stood, blackened and still, like silent witnesses to something no one else had seen. He stepped up to the old flat stone, the one where he'd left the final apple a year ago. Benny pulled out his small knife and sliced the apple, just one piece, the perfect size. No rush, no expectations. He placed it gently on the flat rock, wiped his hands, then sat down on the ground with his back against a tree. The breeze whispered softly. Birds called out in the distance, no eyes watching. No quiet footsteps padding through the dry leaves, just a slice of apple, a boy, a promise. Time passed, nothing happened. Benny smiled. He wasn't disappointed, because he knew if a return ever came, it would never be on a human schedule. Then, just as the sun dipped low and touched the treetops, a soft sound came from behind him. A faint tick, like a fingernail tapping glass. Benny turned. Ember. The same eyes, the same quiet posture, but bigger now, sleeker. Its gaze not just bright, but wiser. It moved closer, no leap, no excited chirp, just steady steps, as if it too had lived through another year, learning how to be something more. Ember stopped in front of Benny, and then, before Benny could even catch his breath, he realized it wasn't alone. Behind Ember, from the gently shifting bushes, 2 more figures emerged. One was smaller, the other about the size Ember used to be. Their eyes glowed the same, ears long and delicate, skin a soft pink, but their gaze was cautious. They didn't step forward, just watched from the brush. Like Benny once had, the first time he saw Ember trembling in the ash. "You didn't just survive," Benny whispered. "You found your own." Ember stepped closer, stopping in front of the apple slice. It didn't eat, just lowered its head slightly, then turned, looking back at the 2 behind it. A signal. It was safe. The 3 stood there, like this moment had always been meant to happen. Benny said nothing more. He didn't need to ask anything, didn't need to hold on, didn't need to make it stay. Just seeing this was enough. As the sun began to set, Ember took a small step back, tapped the ground once with its foot, a goodbye without words. Then all 3 turned and slipped through the underbrush, disappearing into the twilight. Benny stayed seated long after they were gone. He placed his hand on the rock, next to the apple slice, with one gentle bite taken from it. The wind moved through his hair. Maybe in life, some strange things happen. Not to be explained, not to be kept, but simply to remind us the world is bigger than we think. And love sometimes means letting someone live their life their way. What do you think about the meeting between Benny and Ember? If one day you stumbled across a mysterious creature, what would you do? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you love stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to Dog Stories so you won't miss the next one. Thanks for listening.